a streamer. Let's go onto YouTube. Clumping's a bit too strong. That's very nice. How do you do rounds again?
Are you streaming?
Yeah, just started. We got 4 people on it at the moment.
I'll be your 5th.
Sick.
Sick, my dude.
Trying to remember how to do expression-based strays.
Did you know, is it the thing that you saved from your tutorial?
I don't know if I saved it anywhere.
You did, I think you emailed it to them. Remember?
Not 100% sure, to be honest.
Was it not a thing from the heading or something?
I've probably got it in a chat somewhere. I'll remember how to do it at some point. Let's round this guy 1.2, 1.4. It's too many. It's a percentage. taper. Hey man, how's it going?
I don't know why I'm whispering after like chatting shit the entire time.
Yeah, you're able to chat. It's Ahmed. He's someone I used to chat to quite a lot. He does some really cool action tutorials as well. What? Someone messaging you? So I'm wondering if it's worth for now leaving this groom here, working on the shorter groom around like the sides and the back, and then coming back to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would, because then you only do the blend shit anyway, so...
Well, they're not really going to blend, to be honest.
You're just going to have it like thrown on top anyway?
Yeah, there's too much of it.
Go to the bottom bit?
Oh, sorry?
Go to the bottom bit?
Yeah, I might give it a go. Because the hair's like, it's in an okay spot, and I kind of want to push for everything and answer questions if people have any kind of thing. I need to add some straight clumps though before I move on. So let's add some noise, stray.
Hope everyone's having a nice Easter.
Let's do that. This is gonna be nuts. That's actually not as mad as I thought. Don't like how it looks though.
I don't like it.
Thanks. I think the delay today is quite a bit larger than last time. At least it appears that way. Right, this needs to be way stronger. Let's go back to the virtual tone. Lower, a bit around this, 3, 5. If anyone viewing, I guess there's only 3 viewers right now. At least one of those is probably Becca.
I haven't opened it yet.
Oh, you haven't opened it? Okay, there's 3 actual. Oh no, there's 2.
There's 2. Jinxed, yeah.
There's 7 people playing back though, so they're like in previous parts of the video. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to just drop a little message in the chat. There's a bit of a delay, like I think it looks like about 10 seconds, maybe 12. But yeah, hopefully it should be fine. Yeah. Oh, we got a like on the video already. Cute. Right, let's create a new groom. And this is guides flip. And I need to actually group everything as well. I made the mistake of not naming my outliner before.
Rookie error.
I know, right? But the thing is, I can't really rename that now.
Oh yeah, because it's really groom.
Yeah, because the groom's on it. It's kind of the whole thing of like people watching the stream, like actual groomers will cringe when they notice that. But obviously this groom's kind of just something, really. It's not really.
It's something.
It's a something. It's not meant to be anything special, but that's the excuse I'll give. So let's create a new groom. XGen. Descriptions. Create description. For hair. Short. 1. Description. Placing guides, although I could do groomable spines, but I'm not too keen on groomable spines. Yeah, it should all be fine. Create that. And then let's create a mask. So where is box editor? Let's get rid of the render geo. Hide the hair for a second. Something like that. And go to description. Create a map. The hair short 1 mask. Let's go with 20 and start. Yeah, start white. Solid brush. Probably should have set up my whack on.
What?
Probably should have set up my whack on before starting the stream. Okay, if we block out, that will do. Save textures. View. Save textures. Yeah, that's fine. Top light's already looking good, man. Can't wait to see when it's done. Thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to see it when it's done either. It's been a while since I did any proper grooming, so I'm a little bit slower and more confused than I normally would be, but hopefully it should turn out alright. Right, I need to hide those top hairs. In fact, no, I don't. I need to do this. That'll do. I can hide the groom here. I do. So I forget preview automatically. And channels. So let's go to width. 1 and a little bit taper. Been some time since I groomed a character, but glad to see action not crashing as much since I worked on it. Yeah, yeah, it's you've jinxed it. It's gonna crash now, guarantee it. But that said, it probably should have crashed by now because I've made a few rookie mistakes while starting this. Things like not actually properly naming the group, so now I'm stuck with group 1 ahead of time, which is absolutely disgusting. How small do I want this guy to be? And why aren't the eyes part of render geo? How short do you want? How short do you think the hair should be on the sides?
I think
because I'm not thinking buzz cut.
I'm thinking like fade. You know what I mean? Like, hang on.
Yeah, because I don't really want to do a fade. I don't think. I mean, maybe I can, but nothing too extreme. I don't want it to get down to like skin length.
No, but I'll see if I can find like a nice undercut.
Because I'm thinking like this sort of length, like maybe a little bit longer actually, maybe something like that. There's like the length of his nose. Pardon?
Do you have Facebook open?
I do have Facebook open. I need to drag the stream
I'm
down.
trying to find the right window. Oh, I just sent you a V. That's not what I meant to send.
You didn't hit Control V, did you?
No, just a V. So I sent you the letter V.
Undercut. Yeah, length like that could be alright. That's about this length. So let's copy that guide shape. Paste it. Can you paste it to multiple guides? You can. Great. I need to add the look dev kit into render geo. Cool. And the light. Yeah, it's in its own group. I need to plug in my whack on. Where is it? Still can't believe I put my whack-on upside down yesterday. And that was my reason for it not working. Oh, you're looking for undercuts? Or are you looking at graph view and stuff at the moment? Right, there we go. No. So what kind of flows do I want this one? Oh, sorry?
Yeah, with some music on, like a little.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's not that.
that was not though. A lot of police today.
I would say there's a lot of people clearing out the parks around us.
Yeah, probably. Let's get guide here, guide here, guide here. Let's get the back of the head down first. How come these kittens have like that guy couldn't? Let's go with. Get some more guides at the bottom. So. With taper. I'm not sure if I want to like flick it towards the ears at the bottom, kind of like what my hair does, or if I want to
No, that's fine. Yeah, no, I think that would work.
just have it like kind of flick back in. Have like a little bit of a curl to it maybe. That is not a curl. Okay. I got tagged in a post by 3D Talk.
What?
I got tagged in a post by 3D Talk.
You did?
Yeah, I have no idea who
Or
it
is
is.
it on Facebook?
Yeah, it's got a notification.
I don't think I informed it. What are they called? 3D
3D Talk.
Core?
Talk. T-A-L-K.
Is the name like all one word? Oh, find it. No, yeah, they shared your live stream.
Sick. get one side working first. So let's have that curl that way, you curl that way. Gonna need a lot more guides. Brush moves so slowly when you're resizing it. I don't know if it's like a scale issue in my scene. Probably is, because he's tiny. He's like 7 centimeters tall. It's cool that the page showed it. Didn't expect that. I was debating posting it to 10,000 hours, but at the same time, like I know that would attract like negative attention as well. Like you always get people who kind of follow live streams just to piss about, really.
Yeah.
This is really boring looking. If I do that, we'll get some pinching. Might be cool. Let's get you and you. Let's pull these either side. I need to shorten the hair quite a lot as well. This is way too long on the sides.
Mm.
Don't want to do that. Why? There we go. So let's pull you up, pull you back. So we get a bit of a weird point, so let's pull you. Go way too far in. Currently I'm grooming all the hairs as if they're the same length, just so I don't have to worry about figuring out length interpolation. So I'm just going to like play about with direction, and then later on I'll be scaling the guides depending on how far up and down the hair they are. Some will argue that's a bad idea, which if I was doing this professionally I wouldn't do it that way. The reason I'm doing it in this case is just because it allows me a bit more freedom. I don't have to worry about too many things at the same time. And I'm not exactly matching anything, so I don't need to worry too much about, you know, exact length changes and all that sort of stuff. I just want to play about and like figure out something that has a nice flow to it. This doesn't at the moment. I think if I grab this guy, playing down a little bit, so he's doing that instead, that might help. But we'll have to see when we get some hair going. But yeah, I'm gonna delete. Going to delete these guys and mirror this side, and we'll do a preview of the hair just to see if it's working or not. Next gen utilities. Oh. My utilities tab is just gone. Weird. And oh, it looks like it's worked there. So I'm going to need more guides here, here, here. let's just see if this works. Something I was saying, so I've got, at the moment I've got a few people I'm mentoring on, I've got 2 people now that I'm mentoring on Access VFX. And something that I noticed is, like, generally speaking, for short hair, people like to use a lot of guides, and there is a place for that, but personally I don't like to use a lot of guides in short hair. There are exceptions to that, especially when you've got a lot of flow variation, but for something like this, where I'm going to be doing quite, like the reference I'm looking at pretty vaguely is this. My guides are too long for this at the moment though. But having something like this, what was my original point? Lost it. Yeah, people like to have a lot of guides, but really you don't need many guides if the length variation and flow variation is gradual, because interpolation will kind of handle that for you. It's kind of important just to let interpolation do a lot of work, because if you're trying to do everything yourself, then you are going to have issues. Just because humans are quite bad at making things look natural generally. It takes like multiple passes, quite a lot of different passes to be honest. So if you let the interpolation do it and then add some noises, it tends to help a bit. His width is way too thick. What width did I use for the hair? 3.001, okay. I'm also going to have less taper on these shorter hairs, just because the hairs are, like, you know, they're shorter, so I'm going to make the assumption that they're more recently cut, and then I'm just growing slower, so I'll have a little bit less taper because of that. That's not technically necessarily correct, but it makes sense, and it might give an interesting texture. So let's hide the guides for a minute. So, crank density. Another thing we can do as well is the human head has roughly 80,000 to 150,000 hairs. Depends on hair color. This guy is going to have, I mean, he's going to have green hair, but I'm going to make the assumption he's got brown hair, which would put the hair count somewhere between 80,000 and 90,000 hairs. And we can actually find out how many hairs we've got in XGen by going up to log statistics level, setting that to 1, and then generating the hair, and it will tell us how many primitives it's made. So in this case it's made 8,600. Now this is half the head, so we obviously don't want to go 10 times more, so we can set this to be what number would work well? Let's go to 5. So that's generated 43,000 hairs, which is roughly the amount we'd expect for half the head. Obviously, you know, I need to kind of paint a density map, so I can kind of like pull back in this area. Especially I need to break up the hairline, because having a hairline on the scalp is not going to give you good results, just because it's a super sharp line. And also, strictly speaking, I should get the scalp and kind of inset it into the head a little bit, just so that the hairs have to come up through the skin. If I was doing hyper realism, that would be something to look into, just because you get slightly better subsurface response through the skin. But yeah, but as I was saying though, with the guide number, like, we've got guides working now. Like, this is actually quite smooth, there's no layering issues, there's not enough flow variation, it's really boring to look at. But we have like basically no guide, so I can completely change the flow of the groom with very little work. So I can just grab this guy, do that, regenerate it, and now we've got a big kind of flow over in this direction, and it's a smooth transition, which is one of the reasons I like to use less guides. If I had a guide directly next to it and pull that in the other direction, I'll fix the guide length in a sec. Then we start to get a bit more of a parting. Is less. No guide found in current description. The sculpt context tool. Alright. Maybe it's because they're hidden. But yeah, so you know, keep your guides sparse. It gives you quite a lot of control. And we've also got this stepping up here. That, at least my first instinct, is being caused by the map being too low res. So the way you can change the map resolution is if we go into the attribute editor, or expression editor, sorry. That will give you a path to the map that we painted in the Maya tool, and the resolution of this doesn't really matter as much. It's this number here. if I set this down to, let's say, 1 and hit apply and then regen my groom, in theory that should have made this choppier, but it didn't. So let's try. That's not doing anything in this case. Let's set that to 50, see if it gets smoother. Let's up to 0.0 if that's important. No, it's not fixing it in this case. Weird. I'll have to look into why that's happening. Congratulations on the work. Could you take a look dead in the skin? Yeah. At some point, I've not really done any look dead on his skin yet. It's just a super basic. Like it's not even got a skin shader really. If I open the hyper shade and grab the skin of this guy, so let me just render geo, graph this. So at the moment, all I've got going in is a. I do not want that. That's gross. All I've got at the moment is just basically a plastic shader, to be honest. There's no subsurface at the moment, as far as I remember. I've got a fractal plugged into roughness just to have some variation. 3D fractal, just because it saves a little bit of time. That throw about UV seams. But that's plugged into my specular roughness, using this ramp here to control the range of values, because this will give me a black to white, and I don't want, you know, 1 roughness in one area and 0 roughness in another, because it would look super weird. The actual shader itself, it's purely just driven by a pixel texture. It's just standard texture map. And other than that, I don't remember adding anything else. I've not got a clear coat. I don't have subsurface. There he is. I don't have single scatter. It's really just super basic at the moment. Obviously, I will be adding subsurface at some point, but that will be probably a few streams away. So let's get back into XGen. Close this guy. W. There we go. So we've got this hair, which is generally doing the sorts of flows we want. I could spend more time getting a really cool like flow in the hair now, but I feel like the length is kind of more important at this point, because we've got a generic block out of the flows that we're going to want in the end. Again, that's just doing this. So now, like, what's having a bigger impact for me at least isn't, you know, the changes of direction or the lack thereof. It's more the fact that it's super jaggy at the bottom because the hair's just so long. The hair at the top is about the length I want. If I preview this at a lower density, the hair at the top is roughly what I want. Oh, that is not. There we go. So this sort of length here is pretty decent, but we do want it to be a lot shorter. I don't know what's going on there. Weird. But yeah, so that's all I'm going to do is go in, grab all the guides below a certain point. I think that works. Grab you and you as well. Scale these down a little bit, and then grab the next layer of guides that want to be shorter. And I will have to do several passes to like smooth out this. And this is frankly kind of gross, the way this is being done right now, but it will work. But I will need to go in and do another pass to get it to look actually good. Let's grab about that. So now we'll probably find that we've got some issues with actually, it's not as bad as I expected. I was expecting to see a lot of intersections just because there's not many guides for the length of hair we've got. Like normally you'd see it kind of diving into the head a bit. We're seeing that in the ear, but nothing really on the inside. So I just have to fix this. Although something else I have to do is actually set the length of the guides and set the mask accordingly. So let's go in and do the mask. interpolation do its thing for these guys. Because it will slowly get more accurate now. Let's get a few more guides in there so I can get some interesting flows. Is that a guide there as well? Yeah, a guide there. So I'm trying to make sure these are at least somewhat uniformly placed. Like there are areas like this one where these two guides are too close together, but we'll see if it gives us any issues. But in the back of my mind, I am making sure that nothing gets too close. There we go. So let's see. Next gen. Cool. And I'm going to switch the shader that I'm using as well. Window, browser. Select the short broom. I got the hair tube shader. I generally like the way the hair tube shader looks a lot more than the proper shader you're supposed to use. Right, so okay, let's get the mask working now. Oh, actually, I need a guide here and here. Does anyone have any questions while I'm doing this, or is everyone doing good? That's just something that's bugging me. Mesh display, soften edge. That's better. Let's save the scene as well. Hey Andy, how are you doing? Apologies in the live chat.
Aw.
Really don't like the positioning of this guide. Let's copy him.
Still only 4 people watching?
Yeah, I know, right?
So sad. I'm one.
You're one of them. Pretty sure I've not got the tab open anywhere, so at least we've got 3 actual viewers. Although there are 25 people playing back.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, so they're like maybe catching up. I don't know. Oh, maybe it's people who have played back. I don't know how this actually works. There we go. Let's paste the shape to that. Skip on that bit. So I think what is making these look weird now, when I'm showing the actual groom, is because they're all curling down the exact same way, and part of that will be broken up by noise. But because they're all curling down like the exact same way, we're getting like a perfect silhouette, which is kind of disgusting. Clumping will help with that a lot, noise will help with that a lot, but I do want to break it up in guides as well. Like it's not great to rely purely on modifiers. They are very helpful, and don't ignore them, but it's really easy to kind of try to skip by guide work, which is never a good move. And people at all levels do it. Like it's the most tedious part of grooming, but in its own way, it's problem solving. It's quite a lot of fun to do. So yeah, but like even like you see professionals, and I've done it myself in the past, where you feel like you need to get something done quick, so you try to skip the guide work, but skipping the guide work isn't going to get you something quickly. It's going to get you more notes, so it's going to take the same amount of time just because it doesn't look as good. So it's good to spend some time getting your guides right at the start. Ah, nice man. Are you doing that in real time, or are you rendering? Well, path tracing. That's not what I want. Drum box. There we go. Let's see how that looks. Why let me? Oh, so is that? Red. That'll do. So let's get this mask done, because I keep saying I'll do it, and then I don't do it. So, solid brush, much smaller size. So, I'm just going to break up the hairline a bit, make it a little bit jaggy. I will have to do multiple passes on this. Oh, right, I'm going to be projecting through there. Ah, hate that. If anyone knows a trick to mask back faces with the artisan tool, because I don't think there's a way to do it. I don't see an option anyway. Stroke maybe. It's definitely not stylus brush. I doubt it's display. No, it's not. Yeah, being able to mask back faces would be pretty helpful with a paint tool, so that you can't accidentally paint over here. Someone's stuck in traffic.
What traffic?
Why is that's something I've been wondering actually. Is like, you know, obviously there's a national lockdown, but there's still like the same amount of traffic on the roads. Like, where are people driving?
Yeah, the mornings are pretty busy. I always get confused.
Yeah, it's like, where are people driving? That's what I'm wondering. Right, this hairline is probably going to look super weird. And I really should have been mirroring this in some way. Although I don't know if it can world space mirror, because the UVs are not symmetrical in this guy. If you're wondering why I'm like wiggling this a bit, it's just so I want to avoid perfectly straight lines in my mask. I mean, obviously you don't have a solid mask either. Like, I will be adding gray values, but anytime you see straight lines in a mask, it's gonna feel a little bit weird unless you've got it super blurry or with some kind of textured brush. With XGen, I tend not to use textured brushes just because historically I've had a lot of issues with them, so I tend to avoid them now. Oh, it's the same in Manchester as well. Yeah, people are just driving everywhere. It's like, where can you go? Mask should not be that high on this side. Oh, that's more of an issue with the guides, I guess. Oh yeah, if anyone assumes that the guide mirroring in XGen gives you perfect results, it doesn't. I'm not entirely sure how it works. I'm not going to pretend I do know. But I assume it's world space. It's trying to find the closest point, but the problem with closest point is unless your object is exactly on the central axis and is exactly symmetrical, it's never going to find the same point on the mesh. So, like, this is just, unless I just painted the mask, it might be alright. But I have had issues with mirroring before, where it's not giving the results you expect. Like, I don't think it's UV based. But yeah, if you got like a slightly asymmetrical model, chances are it won't work. It's just something to be aware of. It might do, maybe they've updated it and I'm behind on the times. But I'd be pretty amazed if they found a way to make something mirror without symmetry or matching UVs on both sides. Alright, that'll do. So let's save texture in here. So again, just if anyone new is on the stream, make sure you're saving textures in here, not just in Xgen, because this saves your actual image, and then this saves the Pt.2 map that Xgen uses. So if you just save here, when you restart Maya, you're not going to have, or if you restart Maya or like restart your computer, or I can't remember which one it is, you'll have issues with not being able to paint your maps anymore. Like you'll click paint and it'll bring up a black model because it doesn't know what to do. Right, I need to make the hair shorter. Let's go really short. See if that works. Just gonna try this out on the sideburns for now. Truly speaking, just a quick side note is really there should be a guide here, but like when it comes to the actual like final groom, I will add a guide here. The interpolation will do a good job. Just because if the hair's interpolating correctly, then your guides are going to follow what the hairs are doing. But while I'm working, like sometimes having gaps like this are quite helpful because interpolation is like automatic. Whereas if I had a guide in the middle, I might mess up the way it's acting whenever I tweak it. So I sometimes like just to leave some gaps. It's still good to keep it mostly uniform. Like it's really not good to have like two guides super close and then a huge gap. But sometimes interpolation can be your friend.
Can I ask a question?
You can ask a question.
So I would like to go on and do the main for this horse. Alright. Do I have to make a new collection or can I choose the same collection?
So a collection is, I mean, as the name kind of suggests, it's a collection of grooms. So you're not going to use a collection per groom.
Yes, you use it for the entire
Yeah, the way I think of collection is everything you need for one character. You technically could do a collection that is your whole, the grooms for your whole scene with multiple characters. There's nothing really stopping you because they don't have to be on the same mesh. Like one collection can use several meshes.
Okay.
One description I can kind of use multiple meshes, I think, with face assignment, but I might be wrong on that.
Okay, and then the next question, so we want to use what kind of primitives? Splines?
Splines.
Yep.
Every time.
Generate the primitives randomly?
Random.
Random, and then control the primitives by using...
I like guides. For a main, I'd say guides.
So placing and shaping guides?
Yes.
Yeah.
But then there are opinions on that, but for a main, I think a guide is pretty much the only way to do it. Also, horse mains are deceptively tricky sometimes. My first professional groom was a horse main.
Cool.
And it was a wake-up call, for sure. Okay. Let's get the other hair showing. Not the guides, actual hair. Feels very helmet-like. Let's see if some modifiers will help. But I need to break up the flow as well. So let's get a clump. So maps. Generate. Nope. 20. $200. I think it's 500 that I used on the head groom. Yeah, that was about right. And then let's lower the mask. So again, anyone who wasn't here for the stream yesterday, this mask set to 1 means that it generates pretty uniformly all of this density. If you reduce this, it kind of like removes a percentage of the hair. So if I set this to 0.2, 80% are going to be removed, but it kind of picks them at random. So if you want random distribution of clumps to get like random size variation, this is your random amount in a way. Obviously, you have to change your density to what's the word? Compensate, yeah. But yeah, I tend to find the value between 0.5 and 0.8 gives me enough variation. Although I will go with 0.8 on this one, just because it's a short groom, and a little variation does a lot. And every time you hit generate, it's going to generate it fresh. So let's take that back to 0.5. Generate again. That's going to be way too big. Okay, let's go with 0.8. Oh, 0.7. Hey Francisco. Don't worry about being late. You can always play through the video. YouTube will automatically keep the stream and publish it when I'm done anyway. So everything will be available. So let's loosen up these comps a bit. So it's a little bit too tight. That feels about right. So for this clumping, obviously it looks a bit funky at the moment because we've got no other kind of breakup. But for this large clump, for short hair, a lot of people tend to, well, I say a lot of people, at least when I was beginning, I used to think, oh, just one layer of clumping should be enough because you only see small clumps. But large clumps are still there. They don't come to a tip. So all I'm looking for right here is the shadows or the partings, basically. I don't care about what the tip is doing because the noise is going to break it up. But clumping will create this sort of thing, which gives really interesting shadows. If I turn, yeah, so like without ambient occlusion and then with it, you can kind of see how it gets like deeper shadows. It just makes it look a bit more interesting. It's not necessarily realistic. But I find, you know, it's sometimes even in VFX it's about getting appeal, not just pure realism. Although obviously realism is the most important thing, but having appeal in there is pretty important too. That's why things still go through multiple levels of design. Although one thing with this obviously is it looks horrible over here, these large clumps, so I'm going to have to mask this. So what I'm going to do is just go into the mask here, create a map. I'm just going to call this fur hair short 01, the name of my groom, and then I'm going to call this clump 01 mask. And so this is the mask for the effect of the clumps. This doesn't change anything about the clumps themselves. It just changes how the hair is affected by them. I'm going to start that with white as well. And I am going to hide the groom. So tool. So with action, because the let's see, actually chalk wet. I'm going to see if I can get one of these working, because in the past I've never had luck with them. But having texture, this fleece is kind of cool. Gaussian brush, that doesn't work. See what brushes are available. Oh, that's kind of cool. Pastel, sand. Okay, let's go with this one. I don't know if this will work or not. No, it does not. Maybe it does. Let's paint black. Oh, it does. Perfect. When I used to try to use this, it never really worked. But it's just good to have some texture. But yeah, so all I'm going to do at the moment is I'm currently painting black where I don't want clumps to be affected, or I don't want hairs to be affected by the clumps. Having a texture to this will help. It does obviously cause a little bit of chaos because, you know, if you've got hairs directly next to each other that get in, like some are, I'd say it's like 60-70% affected, and then some are fully affected, you are going to get like little partings or hairs crossing through each other. But that's fine on an individual hair level. That's completely fine. It's when you're doing bigger clumps that you need to worry more about that. But yeah, so what I'm doing at the moment is I'm just making it so that the shortest hairs are being less affected. It's because generally, like, the longer hair is, the more likely it is to be affected by clumps around it. Just because there's more physical reach of that hair to reach clump curves. So I'm going to get this way bigger. Just add some variation. I don't like how it responds to tapping the brush though. It seems hit and miss. And then at the front over here I'm going to go like all out, just paint this completely black. I can always add it back in later if I want to though. There's less breakup around the ear as well. Something I used to do though, and it is occasionally helpful, is I'll still use a solid brush, and rather than painting, texture and breakup like I did for the hair mask, sometimes what I like to do, and I'm not going to do it in this case just because I do want texture, but something that is kind of cool to do sometimes is paint like a general value of what you want the hair to be doing. And the reason to do this is because like you can then learn, how is this supposed to look? So how should black on the map translate to how the hair looks? How should 0.25 on the map translate to how hair looks, and how should 0.5 translate? Having those is pretty helpful sometimes. I'm just going to undo that. So just understanding what the numbers mean, because this, like I look at this and I see texture, I see breakup, I see dark, I see light, but I have no idea what values are in this, just because it's textures, they're mixing. I don't know necessarily what values I'm working with. Some of the best groomers I've ever met also like to do this strip. There's not many that do it, but like I know a couple of good groomers that really like doing that, because it is important to understand your groom like fully, and really know what your setup is doing. And the best way is to know the actual numbers. But yeah, so I'm just going to hit save textures here, and then I'm going to save the Pt.2, so that will make it usable. And then when I generate the groom, you see how the clumping is stronger up here than it is down here? That's the reason. It's still present because I've not painted pure black. And I think if I show this, I'm actually painting below where most of the hair is, so I do need to paint further up. But you can see here like how big of a difference that made. Like it was completely just broken earlier. So I'm going to paint higher up because I underestimated that. And also, I should have probably painted this with the guides visible. That helps a lot too, because guides don't get in the way, they're a lot smaller. So let's just... Is there a rotate and stroke? Yeah, there might... Oh, there's a rotate and stroke. So why is it not rotating? Or why is it not doing much? Oh, it is rotating, just not randomly. This is one of the reasons that some people do like to paint their textures inside of mud bucks. You can paint Pt.2 directly in mud bucks, or you can paint, TIFF files, well, probably not EXLs, but you can paint TIFFs or JPEGs or whatever you want in any software. And all you have to do to use that is, so just hit save textures there. There's a few options, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I did it. But one of the things you can do is replace this path with a path to your file, or a path to the folder that your file is in, and it will pick up that and convert it to Pt.2. Or you can go into the hypershade, go to the browser, go to textures, and here's all the textures you've painted. So there we can see my region map. Sadly, they're not properly named, like the nodes themselves aren't named. But if you click on, like, let's say file 8, that's going to point, this is the clump 1 mask that I've just been painting. This is the physical location of it. I can view this. So I could replace this file with, I could replace that file with a hand-painted thing in another tool, and then go back into the paint tool, and it will load this image, or load the image that I've plugged into this file node. And then you just hit save textures, and then XGen will save as well. It's just like you have quite a lot of control doing that. Personally, I prefer the speed of just working in one software. Like, the quality of your maps is obviously important, but the actual important thing about them is the values you're using, not how the map looks. Because ultimately, this is a procedural workflow, so a lot of it comes down to the setup rather than, perfect guide placement, perfect map painting. It's more about like how you structure your modifiers, and obviously the guides, everything else is incredibly important, but the effect of the quality of your maps isn't as high as you'd expect. It's still important though. Like, don't underestimate your maps. Do put time into them, don't just squiggle. But yeah, at least if you want like a finished, like high quality groom. But yeah, so I'm just going to create clump 2. And as always, we're going one level higher. So the previous one was 500, so I'm going to set this to 2000 just as my starting point. And I'm going to add, let's say, 0.7 again. And you'll see now we've got use control maps as well. This is just telling it to obey like the clump ones. So basically making sure that these smaller clumps are themselves clumping to the large clumps. So I'm just going to generate this, hit save, and then I'll preview that, and we get something like this. Adding the right, okay, so this is where the randomness comes in. If you overdo it, you'll get patches like this where it's just one huge clump. So I'm going to regenerate that. I'm going to regenerate that with less randomness. Save that. And now we're going to get less of those. We do still get them. Anytime that you add randomness, you are likely to get one or two of these. And to be honest, I think I need to go a bit denser actually as well. So let's go with, oh, that didn't update. And hit save. I don't think it updated properly. There we go. Ricardo, hello, I wonder how it works. The rectangle with colours. I mean, those colours fit the HDR image. I'm so confused. I'm a little confused as to what.
Colours.
Yeah, but what colours are you referring to?
I think I'm getting a call.
Great.
But
Ricardo, what exactly is it you're talking about? I'm not entirely sure I know what you're referring to. The rectangle with colours. I mean, those colours fit the HDR image. Oh, you mean this guy? It's called a Macbeth chart. Basically, I guess that's a rectangle with colours. I assume this is what you mean. This is just a way of kind of checking the lighting of your scene and checking how well calibrated the camera is. Obviously, in CG, we don't really have to worry about calibration of a camera. But using the color chart, you can tell how yeah, Macbeth chart. Yeah, Francisco, you're right. It allows you to tell like how your lighting is affecting red tones. It lets you see how your lighting is affecting blue tones. So obviously, if you've got like really blue lighting, you're gonna see the red tiles are gonna look super weird. That's kind of what it's helpful for. There's also you can use it to color correct. So that's kind of the main use in VFX. That's the main use. For a full CG film, it's less useful. But it allows you, if on set they capture a chrome ball, a grey ball, and a Macbeth chart, you can use that in Nuke to do a color match so that your renders and the lighting of your renders will match exactly or closer to. So it's more of kind of a debugging tool. It's not directly helpful, to be honest, because this guy's in full CG and because he's not realistic. They're not really essential. I just like to have them, partially because they look cool and partially because I've just got used to having them there over years. I've been using Macbeth charts in my renders now for about 5 years, so I've just gotten used to having them there. It's like a comfort blanket for a VFX artist. Right, so I still think this is a bit too strong, so I'm gonna increase this a bit. If anyone's wondering how I'm telling if this, this density is right, there's no method in my head right now. I'm just kind of looking at it and thinking, oh, that doesn't look right. It's not the sizes I expect. I can't pinpoint and tell you something that would allow you to know. It's more just a case of grooming more and more, and you slowly get used to seeing shapes. This is still arguably too big, but we'll play about a bit, see how it goes. So if I turn that. Let's tighten that back up a little bit. Okay, so same thing again with this guy. I'm going to add a map to control it. So let's go into create map. For her short clump O2. Oh, did I name? Oh, I didn't name it. For her short O1, clump O2, mask. Cool. And then I'm going to fill that with white again. So when I hit this, hide the groom, show the guides. But those colours are from the X-Right and left chart. Yes, they are. They're actually the exact same colours. You can find data online as to like the exact RGB values. Like in my old like full look I've seen, I did have each tile had its own material. That was a bit overkill. Now I'm just using a gamma corrected image and just mapping it with the UVs. What was I doing? Oh yeah, when did you? But yeah, it is the X-Right colours. You're right on that one. So I'm going to reduce the opacity on this. Using a large brush is also really helpful sometimes. The reason it's helpful is because it gives you a better fall off. Now, something to be aware of is this brush never really paints its full value. So in here it will be very low value. We can't see it unless I grade my monitor. In fact, let's try set this to 2 and see if we can see it. Yeah, so setting the exposure to 2, you can see how actually there's only a thin strip where it fully paints black. Like hell, I'm painting right now with a low opacity mind. If I go back in full opacity, so you can see how my brush is this big, but it's only in the middle where it's actually reaching the full value. If I set this exposure to 1, we don't see that. So having these softer brushes is only helpful to a point. Generally speaking, if you want no effect, you have to use a solid brush. And that will now go through and paint completely solidly. So setting this exposure, or is that gamma or is that exposure? Oh, that's gamma, sorry, not exposure. But this paints the solid colour for your whole brush. There is a slight like dippling effect, but I don't know what causes that. I guess it's just it's some kind of rasterization or dithering issue. But that's the only way to paint a pure colour for the whole brush. Yeah, so that one is gamma, this one's exposure. But having these softer brushes allows you to get a really nice fall off. So if I just get really huge brush, moderate opacity, like 0.1 opacity, that allows me to really fade it quite nicely. And then I can just paint white back in up here, and that will get some nice variation. Not variation, but nice fall off, really. No problem, man. So let's save textures. I'll save the if. And then let's save this. So now when we generate our hair, yeah, there we go. So now we've got clumping just towards the top, really. 37,000 hairs, so the mask removed quite a few. I'm going to increase the density just a little bit. So let's set this to 6. There we go, 42,000. And I need to add taper. Oh, I've already got taper. I need to add more taper. Yeah, the changing your monitor gamma, it's not something I often do. To be honest, I just I remembered it was there and played with it. But yeah, it's always good to, you know, I mean, this screen that I'm streaming on at the moment is a color corrected monitor. It's a BenQ PD. I can't remember the exact. I think it's Pt.2 but it's a color correct monitor. But even then, like with a full range monitor, not HDR but full range. You can't see the dark values as much, so just playing about with this helps a lot. But yeah, that's why I was saying earlier how it's good to use the completely solid brush, because you don't have to worry about the values you're using there, because you know your values. Like whatever value you enter in the paint tool is the exact value you get back out. There's no interpolation. There's only that little dithering on the edge, but that's negligible because you know each pixel is like a hair. So you're not going to see that in your groom, at least in a way that actually matters. But yeah, so I've got something like this. I will need to loosen these clumps a bit, and I do need to make them smaller still, because this feels very strange. So let's go into set up maps again. Let's set this to 4,000, let's just kill it. Generate. Okay, and then hit save. And then regenerate. Yeah, there we go, that's a bit more like it. But yeah, obviously the higher number you create in there. If you're interested in how clumps are really working, we can hit preview guide tip. So all we're doing is, if you're familiar with Yeti, I think Yeti is the only tool that works this way. I mean, you can make Houdini do it, but then you can make Houdini do anything. But if you've seen Yeti clumping, this is fundamentally the same thing. I mean, all groom tools really are, as far as I'm aware anyway. So all you're doing when you hit generate maps, you're actually generating a separate groom that is just way less dense. So this number, if I entered the number from if I entered 60,000, this number here, then I'm going to have a clump per hair. Obviously you want to use lower numbers, but yeah, like using 4,000, all it's going to generate is a 4,000 density groom. Not 4,000 curves, but 4,000 density. It depends on the scale of your model and the surface area, I think. And then when you hit save on that, all that happens, it generates a smaller groom, which you can see by previewing guides, and the hairs of your actual groom will find the closest clump hair and get pulled to it. So the reason this becomes important is this is how the subclumping works as well. If I turn off my clumps, if I turn off my clump 1, sorry, and preview the guides again, obviously it's going to be really hard to see what's going on. So let's go, because I don't know if there's a way to preview. Oh yeah, it's clump curves, yeah. I haven't got a mask plugged into my clump curves. On a creature you would want a mask, just to avoid generating too many hairs, but this is negligible. Although for full VFX you would want a mask saying, stop generating clump curves at some point. Anyway, when I turn on and off the clumping, oh that's not the groom I want, this is the groom I want, you will see a very slight deviation. So let's go preview guides. I think I need to make this really tight for it to work, so let's just do that. Okay, so we should see this pretty strongly. So let's preview the guides. So these guys are getting pulled, and if I turn off this, preview guides again, you see how they're all just going in a straight line now? If I turn this on, preview guides, they're getting pulled back in towards it. So all that's happening is you're generating a smaller hair system which gets clumped to the clump system below that one, which gets clumped to the clump system below that one, and the final result, the one that you see on your groom, is this final one. Your hair is clumped to that. So that's why clump density is insanely important, just because if you have your clump densities really similar, these curves are trying to clump to the closest curve, but if they're always really super close, you might have issues with simply the hair's not knowing which clump to snap to, so every frame it will flicker. You tend to get like a little jittering effect in your groom. Let's add some modifiers. So let's go in with cut. That seems really sparse all of a sudden. What is this doing? This clump modifier is broken. That's super weird. Let's try that again. Cut. Please work. What is going on? I found a new bug again.
Open and close.
Not yet. Let's set mask lower, see if that's gonna. That is a new bug. Okay, we're gonna ignore cut for now. Gonna add some noise. I'll reopen Maya in a second. Let's just go in with noise for now. So obviously that's a bit strong. Rand 0.02 to 0.04. If I remember correctly, that's what I used in the actual hair. That feels about right. Set the frequency to around 6. feel like I want to make the hair a lot shorter. Like a lot shorter. So let's go in. That's a bit better. Whenever you shorten a groom, you're going to want the clumps to get a bit denser, just because short hairs physically can't clump as tightly as can't clump as large as what's the word I'm looking for? Shorter hairs can't reach as far as longer hairs, so the clumps are going to have to be smaller. Close my paint back on my mouse, it doesn't say from that. Yeah, so Ricardo, what you're talking about there is basically when you save a map with the save button up here, it's not actually saving the texture. What it is saving is a let's go to one mess. What it is saving is the Pt.2 file, but you're not actually getting a real map out of that. So all you have to do is whenever you're in the paint tool, you go into your tool settings and just hit save textures down here, and that will save the actual image of the map you painted, because that's what the paint tool is using. And then when you hit this save up here, it's converting that to it's converting that basically. Let me regenerate this. This needs to be a bit denser still. That's a bit better. It feels a bit doggy though. Really confused by this cut modifier breaking. So let's reduce this. That's way too strong. About half as much. Feels a bit better. These gaps are too much. We do need the hairs not clumping as strongly. Something we can do, although not necessarily something I recommend, is we can just loosen this all the way up, and we're going to get less gaps through to the scalp, although we are still getting quite a few. I think this has to go even denser. Let's turn you off. Set of maps. Let's go to 1000. That's a bit better. And we have to generate you again. Every time you generate a clump system, you have to regenerate any clumps that are smaller. Just because they need to have updated clump maps, basically. So let's put you down to there. But yeah, something you can do to kind of fill in these gaps is you can add a percentage of strays. So if we set stray percentage to, let's say 15%, enter on that, we can plug the strays in here. So if I just say stray, open bracket, close bracket, and set this on space question mark, 0, 1, basically strays won't clump now. But that's not really acting the way I wanted it to though. That should be working though. Oh, because the hairs aren't working to that, okay. Okay, I'll have a play about it, see if it works. Now, that's a bit nice. Ah, bless me. That's not going to work. That's a bit much. Still a bit much. I need to reduce the randomness on this. Let's just set that to 1. Set you to 7,000. So now we're starting to get to a point where it would actually be more efficient if I paint out clumps at the top. I'm not going to do that yet, but we should paint that in here. So if you ever want to change the density of your clumps to make like size variation, the way you do that is by adding a map into this. You know, as I shown you earlier, setting this value to a lower number kind of deletes random curves, which in a way I don't really like for when you're painting maps, because it means that the less dense areas are way more random, which means you get some really large clumps sometimes. But if you want to change the amount of clumps you get, then you paint it there. If I set this to 0, obviously it will get rid of all of them. So I could paint a pure black and white map to say I don't want clump curves up here. That would be a bit more efficient on memory. In the case of this groom though, and on this computer, like it's really not too much of an issue. I've got 64 gig of RAM, and I'm just doing a digitable groom. This would be lucky to get over. I'd say it's lucky to get over, let's say, about 5 gig maybe for the whole finished thing, depending on how many CVs I use, obviously. Which actually, speaking of which, I need to increase the CVs I've got. Let's go with 8. But yeah, so if I paint this guy, I'm gonna paint some more black. That's not the one I want. That's the one I want. And I'm painting clump 1, so save texture. Save this texture. There we go. Because I've just reduced the mask. Not the mask, sorry, the mask. Because I've just reduced that, I'm not generating new clump curves, so I don't need to regenerate these. Basically, when you generate a clump hair system, it's under the hood. It's basically creating its own kind of region map type thing. Anytime you change that, the region map is changing, and that region map is how these layers kind of get stacked on each other. And you can see it in here. That's the control mask, control map. That's auto-generated by the clumps. So let's just, there we go. It still feels a bit dog-like. I think I need to reduce the amount of clumping. Although this cut modifier is really weird. I don't know why it's doing that. If I set this to 1, it's going to cut it to 0, which we expect. If I set this to 0, it's going to cut it not at all. Set it to 0.2. It should cut each hair down. What if I keep around? No. 0.1. Yeah, this isn't how cut modifiers are supposed to act at all. So 0.2. Yeah, that's super weird. It seems to just be deleting hairs that are longer than a certain length, which is really not what it's supposed to be doing. So I'll have to mess about with that to figure out what's going on. But for now, I'll just have to turn off that. You know what, I'm going to go denser again on both of my clumps. The more I look at it, the more I'm thinking it's just not quite right. So let's set you to 1,500, so 50% more hairs. Generate. Decrease the randomness, which will in turn generate more hairs. And then regenerate this guy. I don't think I need to change his density at all. Regenerate that. And then I think I need to paint, repaint a bit of this map. Add a bit more black. So do something like that. Save textures. That feels a fair bit better. It's a bit too clumpy. I think the issue all along is that it's just a bit too clumpy. This groom isn't really acting the way it's supposed to. There's a few things it's done now that aren't what I expected it to do. So I think for now I'll leave that where it is. Let's get the render geo back up. Hide the sculpt geo. Okay. I'm just going to save the scene because I haven't saved in ages. Alright, so let's do a preview render.